If you're spending $60 a month on commercial chicken feed, that's over $700 a year. In 5 years, more than $3,500, and you still own nothing. You're renting nutrition from a system that profits from your dependence. But there's a tree, one single tree, that produces enough protein-dense foliage to replace up to 70% of that grain bill. It grows fast, it grows free, and almost nobody in the Western world is using it. This isn't a fringe idea. This is a plant that has quietly fed livestock across 3 continents for centuries. And the reason you've probably never heard of it isn't because it doesn't work. It's because nobody profits when you stop buying feed. The plant is Moringa oleifera. And what most people get wrong about moringa is this. They think it's a supplement, a superfood trend, something you sprinkle on a smoothie. It's not. Moringa is an agricultural engine. And the gap between how the Western world perceives it and how the rest of the world has used it for generations, that gap is where the real story lives. Here's the problem nobody frames correctly. Commercial chicken feed isn't just expensive. It's a recurring bill with no exit strategy. Every month you pay, and every month you own nothing more than an empty bag. Feed prices have risen roughly 40% in the last 5 years. Supply chains fracture. Corn and soy prices swing with weather, politics, and futures markets you have zero influence over. You're not farming, you're subscribing. And the subscription keeps getting more expensive. Moringa breaks that model. Not by trimming your feed costs, but by making a permanent piece of your feeding system, something you grow, not something you buy. That distinction matters more than any percentage. The reason moringa works as a feed replacement is simple. The leaves contain between 25 and 30% crude protein on a dry weight basis. That puts it in the same range as soybean meal, the most common protein source in commercial poultry rations. But here's what makes it genuinely unusual. Moringa leaves contain all 9 essential amino acids. That's rare for a plant source. Most plant proteins are incomplete. They're missing 1 or 2 amino acids poultry need for egg production, feather growth, and immune function. Moringa doesn't have that gap. It also carries significant levels of calcium, iron, potassium, and vitamins A and C. In practical terms, one tree doesn't just replace protein. It delivers a micronutrient spectrum that commercial feed manufacturers have to add synthetically. And the biological mechanism behind its growth speed is what separates it from every other feed crop you could plant. Moringa can grow 3 to 4 meters in its first year. In warm climates, you can harvest the leaves every 35 to 45 days, and the tree regenerates. Cut it back, and it branches more aggressively. You're not depleting the plant. You're triggering it to produce more. No other livestock feed crop on Earth combines this protein density with this regeneration speed. That's not marketing. That's botany. If the biology explains why it works, the history explains why you've never been told about it. Moringa has been cultivated for over 4,000 years. Ancient Egyptians used moringa oil. Indian Ayurvedic texts reference it across more than 300 documented applications. Across sub-Saharan Africa and Southeast Asia, moringa leaves have fed both people and livestock for generations. Not as a novelty, but as a staple. Before the chemical revolution of the 1950s, feeding livestock from trees wasn't considered alternative agriculture. It was agriculture. Silvopasture, integrating trees into animal systems, was how a significant part of the world operated. That shifted when industrial feed manufacturing scaled up. Corn, soy, and pre-mixed rations became the default. Not because they were better for small-scale keepers, but because they were better for supply chains. Better for packaging, better for creating repeat customers. What doesn't generate recurring revenue isn't taught. That's not conspiracy, that's economics. No feed company has ever had an incentive to show you a tree that eliminates their product. This knowledge didn't disappear because it failed. It disappeared because it couldn't be sold in bags. So the biology is real. The history is real. But here's where most people stall. Because knowing moringa works and knowing how to make it work as a feed system are 2 completely different things. And this is the part that almost nobody explains well. There's a principle in livestock feeding that applies directly here. It's called cut and carry. And once you understand it, the entire moringa system clicks into place. Cut and carry means exactly what it sounds like. You go to the tree, you cut branches, you carry them to the chickens. The chickens never touch the living tree. This matters far more than people realize. Young moringa trees are fragile. Chickens scratch. They strip bark. They destroy root zones. If you let a flock free range around a young moringa tree, you won't have that tree for long. The number one reason people fail with moringa isn't the plant. It's giving the flock direct access before the tree can handle it. Cut and carry solves this entirely. You control the harvest. The tree stays protected. The chickens get fresh leaves without the opportunity to damage the source. And here's a small detail that makes a real difference. Instead of scattering cut branches on the ground, where they get trampled, soiled, and wasted within minutes, hang them. Suspend a branch at chest height from a cord or hook inside the coop or run. The chickens peck at the leaves throughout the day. It keeps the feed clean. It reduces waste to almost nothing. And it gives them activity, which matters more than people think for flock health. That one shift, from ground feeding to hanging, changes moringa from a messy experiment into a clean, efficient system. Most people who try moringa and give up made this mistake first. They didn't fail at growing it, they failed at delivering it. Now here's where the system becomes powerful. Because moringa doesn't just tolerate being cut. It responds to cutting by growing faster and producing more leaf mass. And there's a method for controlling that response. It's called pollarding. Pollarding is an ancient pruning practice. The idea is simple but counterintuitive. Instead of letting your moringa grow tall, which it will naturally try to do, reaching 5 or 6 meters in ideal conditions, you cut the main leader at about 1 to 1.5 meters high. What happens next is what makes moringa different from almost any other tree. The tree doesn't stall, it bushes out. It throws lateral branches in every direction. Each of those branches produces its own canopy of leaves. Instead of one tall trunk with foliage you can't reach, you've got a dense, branching shrub with 10 times the harvestable leaf surface, all within arm's reach. This isn't gardening, it's yield engineering. You're directing the tree's energy away from vertical growth and into horizontal leaf production. And every time you harvest those lateral branches, the tree responds the same way again. More branching, more leaves, more biomass. Growers in tropical regions who pollard aggressively report 6 to 8 harvests per year from a single tree, each harvest producing several kilograms of fresh leaves. One tree, managed this way, starts to look less like a plant and more like a quiet, self-recharging feed station. But here's what most people get wrong. They're too cautious with the first cut. They wait too long, let the tree go tall, and then try to correct it. Pollard early. That's the principle. If you cut the leader while the tree is still young and vigorous, the bush response is stronger and faster. Wait too long, and you're working against the tree's established growth pattern instead of shaping it. If this is changing how you think about your feed system, hit the like button. It tells YouTube to share this with other people who are building something real. And I'm curious, have you ever grown moringa? Or is this the first time you're seeing it as a full feed replacement strategy? Drop it in the comments, I actually read them. Now here's a critical distinction. Throwing a handful of moringa leaves into the coop once a week is not a feed system. That's a treat. The difference between a treat and a replacement is volume and consistency, and understanding how to transition your flock gradually. The principle is simple. You don't swap 70% of the feed on day one. You start by replacing a small portion of the grain ration with fresh moringa leaves. The flock adapts. Their gut biology adjusts. You observe, are they eating it readily? Are egg production levels holding? Are the birds maintaining weight? Then you increase, slowly, over weeks. Observation over rigid ratios. Every flock is different. Every climate produces moringa, with slightly different nutrient density depending on soil, sun exposure, and harvest timing. So the transition isn't a formula. It's a feedback loop between you and the birds. And this is where dried moringa becomes essential to the system. Fresh leaves are powerful, but they're seasonal in most climates, and they spoil quickly. The real leverage comes from what growers call green meal. Moringa leaves dried in shade, then crushed or ground into a fine, storable powder. Green meal holds its protein content remarkably well when dried correctly. It stores for months, and it mixes directly into whatever grain ration you're still using, making the replacement seamless. The flock can't pick around it. The nutrition is integrated, not optional. This is the shift that turns moringa from an interesting idea into an actual system. Fresh leaves in the growing season. Green meal through the off-season. One tree feeding 2 delivery methods across 12 months. And this is where the system earns its real value. Because most people assume moringa is only for tropical growers. That's wrong. The system works in cold climates too. The strategy just changes. In USDA zones 10 and above, moringa grows year-round as a perennial. You harvest continuously. In zones 8 and 9, it dies back in winter but returns from the roots in spring. You lose production for a few months, but the tree survives. In zones 7 and below, moringa thrives in large containers, outdoors in summer, moved into a greenhouse or sunroom before first frost. Some growers in Zone 6 report 4 to 5 solid harvests per warm season using this approach. But the real cold climate strategy isn't about keeping the tree alive through winter. It's about harvesting hard in summer and storing the surplus. This is where the system rewards forethought. During peak growth, those warm months when moringa is producing aggressively, you harvest more than your flock needs right now. You dry the excess, you build a reserve of green meal, and that reserve carries your flock's protein supply through the months when the tree is dormant. The growers who make this work in northern climates aren't the ones with the best greenhouses. They're the ones who understood that moringa's real value isn't continuous fresh harvest. It's total annual yield stored intelligently. Summer abundance becomes winter protein. The system doesn't break in cold climates. It just asks you to think in seasons instead of days. If this is changing how you think about your feed system, hit the like button. It tells YouTube to share this with other people who are building something real. And I'm curious, have you ever grown moringa? Or is this the first time you're seeing it as a full feed replacement strategy? Drop it in the comments. I actually read them. Let me ask you something. If one tree could feed your flock for 20 years, while your neighbor keeps buying bags of grain every month, what would that difference look like after a decade? Let's put the compound numbers on this. At $60 a month, reducing your grain bill by even 50% saves you $360 in year one, but feed prices have been climbing roughly 8% annually. Project that forward. In 5 years, you're not saving $360. You're saving closer to $500 per year. Over a decade, the compound savings crossed $6,000, and you still have the tree. A tree that hasn't cost you a single dollar since the day you planted it. But here's what almost nobody talks about. Moringa isn't just a feed replacement, it's a proof of concept. If you can grow one tree, pollard it into a leaf production system, dry the surplus, and carry your flock through an entire year with less than half the grain you used to buy, you've proven something to yourself that matters more than the savings. You've proven you don't need the system as much as you thought you did. That realization compounds faster than the money. Here's something most people miss, and it matters more than adding another plant or another animal to your property. Moringa doesn't exist in isolation. The real power shows up when you treat it as the center of a small cycle, not a standalone hack. The leaves feed your chickens. The chickens produce manure. The manure composts and goes back to the moringa tree and to your garden beds. The garden feeds you. One tree quietly connects 3 systems: animal nutrition, soil fertility, and human food production. Now layer in time. Fresh moringa leaves through spring and summer. Dried green meal stored for fall and winter supplementation. Comfrey or clover planted in the understory around the moringa's root zone, fixing nitrogen and building soil. You're not just growing a feed crop. You're designing a cycle where every output becomes an input somewhere else. The difference between collecting tips and building self-sufficiency is the design. Diversity reduces dependence. Diversity reduces risk. And when each piece feeds the next, you stop managing, and the system starts sustaining itself. You don't need to build all of this in one season. Start with one tree. Pollard it early. Learn the cut and carry rhythm. That's enough for year one. Permission to start imperfect. You don't need to overhaul your entire feeding system this weekend. You need one tree, one spot with full sun and good drainage. One decision that compounds quietly for the next 20 years. Start imperfect. That's how real self-sufficiency begins. Remember, independence from commercial feed isn't about doing more. It's about needing less from outside. Moringa isn't a trend. It's a 4,000-year-old system that the modern feed industry had no incentive to teach you. Now you understand how it actually works. If you want more calm, strategic thinking about building a productive homestead without burnout, subscribe to the Invincible Method. This channel is for people who'd rather build permanent systems than chase temporary hacks. And I'm curious, what's the one thing holding you back from trying this? Is it climate, space, not knowing which variety to start with? Tell me in the comments. I actually read them. Thanks for spending this time here. I'll see you in the next one.